The Big Red Monster, the Big Red Machine, the Undertaker's brother. That's gotta be Kane! That's gotta be Kane! He just ripped the door off its hinges! And from there, from Bad Blood 1997, the Undertaker's brother, Kane, Glenn Jacobs, the man behind the mask, rose to prominence as one of the best big men of the modern era. He truly made that character his own. It is kind of funny, though, that the man made millions while wearing a mask, despite the fact that it turned out that he was an anti-mask, anti-vax, complete right-wing nutjob nutcase that just proved that maybe too many goddamn chair shots to the head might rattle the whittle brain around and prove that, well, as JBL said, you can disagree with his politics, but you can't disagree with Kane as a man. Actually, you kind of goddamn can, because when it comes to politics, they kind of define the man or the woman or the animal or the vegetable or the mineral, but nevertheless, I'm John Rectum with my review, WWE on A&E Biography, WWE Legends on Kane. Now that I've gotten every crackpot off the goddamn channel, now I can talk to the wrestling fans that actually appreciate wrestling and can understand that, yes, you can appreciate the character, but you also can understand that the person behind the character, behind the gimmick, might not be the best, because as certain things get peeled back, we realize some of our favorites weren't always the best goddamn people. There are still people that praise Chris Benoit. I'm not comparing Chris Benoit to Kane, because Kane just said that he pretended to, destroy people, bury people, and electrocute Shane McMahon's testicles with jumper cables and a battery, and Tombstone Linda, where her head was about 5 goddamn miles from the stage, but I digress. Kane truly is one of the best big men of the modern era. I mean, the Kane character shouldn't have worked. And Glenn Jacobs was the only man that could pull it off, just like Mark Calloway was the only man that could pull off the Undertaker gimmick. Now, this wasn't necessarily the most revealing documentary. It was kind of cool to hear more about his early life. And this did spend a lot, and I mean a lot of time on the Undertaker-Kane rivalry, at least the initial part of it. And then it just human centipede a whole bunch of clips together. So this was a well done biography as far as a timeline, but man, it just skipped over so many chunks of his career. It did skip over Katie Vick, but I'll get to that. He talks about his early matches and everything, and how he wasn't sure the wrestling was going to work out. That he had some horrible gimmicks, the Christmas Creature, Isaac Yankem, DDS, all that stuff. His goal was to be the best Knox County mayor like no one ever was, to take Knox County up to the best, to train them is his cause. I don't really understand what I'm on about. But he was born in Spain. He was, part of a military family. His dad served in the Korean War. And it was good to hear from his mother and his father. That was really cool. And his mother apparently was a wrestling fan. Or at least she was really into it. The dad was more reserved and everything. And I believe the mother even said that her dad was a wrestling fan. So it's nice that there's a little bit of lineage as far as the passion for wrestling in the Jacobs family. And it was good to hear from talking heads. They couldn't get Jim Cornette for that. He talked about why he didn't want to be part of it, even though he had a major, major hand in helping Glenn Jacobs rise to U.S. prominence as far as his time in Smoky Mountain Wrestling as Unabomb, and then also helping form the Kane character. And I don't blame him for not wanting to be part of this, because Kane exposed himself as a goddamn nut job. And if you agree with Kane on a lot of the shit that he says, hate to say it, you kind of got your head up your goddamn ass, and you probably should stop that. Stop having shit for brains. Don't be stupid. That being said, we see shots of Missouri, Moscow Mills, Missouri, and then Bowling Green, Missouri, and then the various things about the family and growing up, how he was teased as a kid, but then when he got into high school, he fell in with the jocks mainly because he was tall. He played basketball, decided to switch college football, suffered a knee injury, torn ACL and meniscus, got invited to the Chicago Bears training camp, but unfortunately his knee injury, which I believe was in 1991, precluded him from being part of that. He needed a new career path. And he saw wrestling, he had met Undertaker, I believe he mentioned later in 1991, decided I should try that. And then we see early shots of his, indie shows, like his first match in March of 1992, Angus the Avenger. I mean, hey, he had the size. I mean, always had the size. That is one thing you cannot teach in wrestling. If you are tall, then by and large you are going to get a look. And it was really kind of cool to see this stuff. Like it's one thing WWE can find this archive footage and find all this stuff and produce it well. Um, Andy dates didn't go all that well because he said he was working with people about the same level of experience. There might have been a veteran here and there, but he really wasn't learning all that much. His early training was just working in a barn, doing a few moves, and then being put out on the indies. The old footage, it was cool to see the old footage. Lawler, USWA, Memphis, all that. Brought him in as a Christmas creature. His mother helped design the goddamn thing, and there was like electrical parts where the Christmas lights had to light up. So I gotta say, it's actually his mother actually is a pretty good designer. And Jerry had him dressed like a Christmas tree. What Taker was called. Taker was a good talking head here, and it made sense why Taker was one of the most featured talking heads because of what both of them meant to each other's respective careers, especially Glenn Jacobs' early time as Kane and even his earlier gimmicks. It was nice to see various clips, quite a few clips of Smoky Mountain Wrestling. About time they started utilizing this library of footage that they have swallowed up and bought and everything, and considering they've had the Smoky Mountain Wrestling Library since 1996, early mid to 1996, about goddamn time. Tom Pritchard, it was nice to hear from Tom Pritchard. The one good Pritchard, the one smart Pritchard to wrestling. Not Bruce. Fuck Bruce Pritchard. All my homies hate Bruce Pritchard. But Unabomb, he was, first he was masked, and then he wasn't masked. Noted anti-Semite Al Snow weighs in. He tried to crack him up because Al Snow can be a funny guy. He is 3 times as or he thinks he's 3 times funnier than he usually is, but nevertheless. Yeah, Al Snow was a good talking head here because he was getting he was getting a sizable featured run in Smoky Mountain Wrestling, and then what would everybody want? Head. And then we see the Jacob Pritchard Wrestling Academy. Wrestling's an amalgamation of athletics, good versus evil, all that, and it's true. And I mean, I hope that if Jacobs is going to teach people how to wrestle, or Pritchard is, that Pritchard can teach them how to wrestle, and Jacobs can maybe teach them not how to have their head up their goddamn ass the whole goddamn career, but I digress. One day I will stop mentioning that stuff, but they're kind of intertwined. His wife, Crystal, she had known people who had dated wrestlers. She's known wrestlers. She didn't want to date a wrestler. But she had 2 kids. She was a hardworking single mother. And one of the kids, I forget which one, had a broken leg, and Glenn cared about him. And they were seeing each other, but she wasn't sure about dating. Crystal wasn't sure about dating Glenn, but then he was at the hospital with coloring books and stuff like that, just supporting, making sure that the kid felt, cared for, because Crystal was at work or something like that. And she's like, all right, gotta date him. And that was a good story. And there was some good family dynamic here. JR helped get Kane to WWE because he worked in Smoky Mountain Wrestling for a bit during his sabbaticals when he had like Bell's palsy, I believe, sometime in 1994 and early 95. Vince saw him and said, you ever been scared of going to the dentist, pal? Ha ha, I have. Dr. Isaac Yankem, DDS, a wrestling dentist. The fact that Glenn Jacobs stuck around in wrestling and that anybody is still talking about him to this day in a positive light is a credit to how hard he works, because a wrestling dentist. I was watching this shit live at the time, guys. I mean, not in person, but I mean live on TV, and it was terrible. It was one of the many occupation gimmicks. It was terrible. Even as I think 14 years old I was when he made his debut as Dr. Isaac Yankem. It was dumb. It was terrible. He did get involved in the Lawler-Brett feud, and Brett helped craft a pretty good match at SummerSlam 1995. Or at least it was decent. It wasn't great for Brett, but it was good for Kane's level of experience at that time. The old footage, great to see the old footage. The backstage stuff and all that, all B-roll, the stuff they have. He had a teeth match versus Taker on Raw. His heart wasn't in it. He messed up working with Undertaker, and Undertaker basically said you have to develop a bit of an asshole about you, to stand up for yourself, and also to just appreciate the business that you're in, but just basically stop being walked over, stand up for yourself. And then Nash and Hall leave, outsiders, all that, and Vince McMahon comes up with the brilliant idea of a fake Razor and a fake Diesel. Now, Rick Bogner was the fake Razor, that didn't work. Fake Diesel was Glenn, and he actually pulled it off. One, he was in incredible shape. I mean, he was bigger than he was as Dr. Isaac Yankem. And he got his confidence back because he was able to kind of portray a real person. Now, that gimmick had shelf life. JBL chimed in, and actually JBL was a decent talking head here, despite the fact JBL is a piece of shit that likes to bully people. And has been hit in the head one too many times. Not one too many times for my liking, because he's still conscious, but I digress. He, eventually, the fake Diesel thing ran its course. And then we have the Kuwait incident where they showed Vader grabbing the interviewer. And getting detained in Kuwait. Read up on that story. I can't go into as much detail about it, but it's better to read up on it. Taker was kind of cool the whole time. He's like, oh my gosh, Leon, what are you doing? I mean, I don't blame Vader for getting upset. Now, I'm not saying that the interviewer was being a jerk towards wrestling. He was asking a question that somebody wanted to have asked. But he did have every right. Vader had every right to get upset. He probably should get upset at the person asked, suggested asking the question. So since Vader was detained in Kuwait and they kind of soured on him, we need somebody to wrestle The Undertaker. We need a feud for The Undertaker. And then they start building the mythos of Kane. And this is where they spent at least a quarter to a third of the goddamn documentary on building Kane and Kane versus Undertaker at Mania 14 and the Inferno match. Oh, we're going to use Glenn. And Undertaker's like, oh my god, yes. I'm like, yes, this is good. Because Taker liked Glenn as a person. Glenn respected Taker. And I do remember the one part, watching at the time, like, June 30th, 1997, I think is the date they said. But Kane's alive, Undertaker! He's alive! And just, it's like, eh? Like, oh shit. Oh boy. This is not good. Because you hear about Undertaker having his parents, the funeral parlor, the fire and all that to kill his baby brother. And it's like, wait, he's alive. Oh. And this was June 30th. They didn't have the pay-per-view, Bad Blood, where Kane made his debut for 3 more months. 3 months in a week. So they had this was a long build. This is the proof of Vince and others being involved, nurturing and building a storyline and making it work. And then having a good payoff, but it's not the crescendo. It just keeps going and it builds to Mania and then it goes to the Inferno match. And I'll talk about that here in a bit. But then they get to the new, they get to the other talking heads here in a bit. But we see the concept art for Kane. Had a cape originally. And, the training footage where I believe Cornette was part of that. But, again, he didn't want to be part of this project. Again, don't blame him. And Seth talks about the payoff, the payoff being, well worth it and everything. All the Bill, Drew, Sheamus, Sami Zayn chime in a little bit. They mostly feature people that worked with Kane early in his career. Mick Foley had a few good lines here. And then, that's got to be Kane, that's got to be Kane. They nurtured this thing for a while. And that was also, unfortunately, the same day where the late, great Brian Pillman passed away earlier that morning. And the look on Taker's face, like, oh my god, what is this? Gets laid out with the tombstone. Shawn Michaels beats him in Hell in a Cell, the first ever Hell in a Cell. And from there, Taker has a grateful exit where he will not fight his brother, but Kane, with leadership of Paul Bearer, is just beating people. We have the red light special because they were massive TLC fans back then. Bet you didn't think you were going to get a TLC reference there. And laying people out chokes on me, beat Mankind at, I believe, Survivor Series 97, which, good thing, that was the only noteworthy thing to happen at Survivor Series 1997 in Montreal. Oh, right. Where Brett screwed Brett according to Vince. No, Vince just didn't want to pay him anymore. Pay a guy that basically broke his body for that company. But nevertheless, Kane finally felt like a superstar. There were some good, parts here where he was laying out the talents. Then the casket match where he, they set the casket on fire. And then Taker returns. I believe it was March 2nd is what they said, March 2nd of 88. And doing the stuff like he had the obvious headset and everything, but he was yelling, you will rest in peace. This was supernatural stuff done right, folks. This is supernatural stuff done right. Yes, looking at it with today's eyes, okay, is it silly? Yes, but it worked then. It was two guys that were established, even though Kane was being well established by that point. It made sense there. Undertaker was a well-established character, but they seemed like real people. They weren't cartoon characters like the ones now. Yes, okay, it's a little cartoonish. Maybe it's just I'm the old you kids get off my lawn goddamn thing. But I felt this is supernatural stuff done right. And then again, the casting man, all this stuff, and Lawler talked about the Mania 14 match. This scene because he loves movie monsters like Godzilla versus King Kong. It took 3 tombstones to put Kane down. They spent a lot of time on this. Great footage. Kane talked about being nervous. Because, it's a big stage, a big deal. An Undertaker streak, even though it wasn't thought of as a streak at that point. It was 91, 92, 93, 94, 95, 96, 97. Yeah, 91, 92, 93, 94, 95. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah, so by this point, he was going to be 8-0. I don't know why it took me that much time to do the goddamn math on my hands. Probably because I'm tired and I've suffered head injuries. But they spent a lot of time on this, and then Kane talked about being a difficulty of emoting through a mask, so he came up with the head tilt, like when St. Bernard that he had at the time. And St. Bernards are great dogs. They're also massive, and they don't know their own strength. You don't want a St. Bernard staying on your shoulder because it thinks it's fun to play when it's standing on somebody laying on the floor. Anyway, he came up with the head tilt thing. And then Wife and Glenn talk about, Glenn met Undertaker in 1991. More Taker, Kane stuff, the Inferno match. Kane talking about, we need to set you on fire to get you used to this. Words that I never thought I would have to say or hear. And the footage. And this is great stuff because, Kane had the arm set on fire. Just don't put it close to your face. You'll handle the flames. Do it like this. And then they build up the thing where he's going to face Austin at King of the Ring 1998. Beats Undertaker in early June of 98. And then has the King of the Ring match where he says, hey, if Mick can't make it out there, because Mick had fallen off the cell, fallen through the cell, and basically had pretty much almost killed himself, literally. Vince said, you're going to have to come up with something else. Well, Mick was able to get out there and do the finish. I don't know how. I still don't know how Mick is walking. I genuinely do not know. Because there's only so many ways you can protect your body. But he won the title and then lost it 24 hours later. And then they just blitzed through like the next 20 years of his career. Because like by 2016, 17, he was pretty much done. Mainly by 2017, I think he was pretty much done. But yeah, we get the Chef Boyardee ad. We get, other commercial spots. They skipped over 99 where he was doing that voice box. Teaming with China getting, China screwing him over. They skipped over the Kane X-Pac feud. I mean, I know it's only a 2-hour show, but I would have liked at least, 30 seconds to a minute of that. That would have been nice because I thought that was a pretty good feud. Not Tori Wilson, the other one. Anybody that knows, Terry Potch, I think is what her name was. But 2000, I mean, they would show Brothers of Destruction stuff, and they would go through they would show them reunited in 98, and some in 99 and 2000. 2001, where they would win the tag titles from Edge and Christian. They would win the WCW tag titles from O'Hare and Palumbo. Nothing about Undertaker braining Canyon. Oh, but it was just because he needed to beat him up, not because he was gay. Why would anybody be homophobic in wrestling, especially Undertaker? But let's get off of that high horse there. Tag champs, and that he was over the moon about this. The weakest link thing, I do remember vividly seeing that and being surprised by how smart Kane was. Not that I thought he was an idiot, but it's just like, Jesus. Also, God, that lady was a prude. Is that lady still alive? The one that was on that hosted the Weakest Link? If so, Annie Lennox clone with half the talent. So, nevertheless, Tom Pritchard talks about wrestling evolving. Again, the only good Pritchard that has ever been in wrestling, or at least among that family. Kane unmasked in June of '03 because they just skipped over everything. They skipped over like his teaming with Rikishi at WrestleMania 2000. I mean, that's fine. They just skipped over a whole bunch of stuff. The feud with Chris Jericho, which I kind of get because he was in AEW, or he's in AEW now. The match with the hardcore match with Big Show and Raven. I kind of wish it was shown a little bit of that because that's a pretty underappreciated, underrated match in Mania history. But then he unmasked in June of 2003. They skip over the Katie Vick thing for some reason. I wonder why. Maybe because it was so goddamn embarrassing. And everybody who came up with it should have been boiled in a volcano. Or maybe they just should have been, set on fire, literally, because that Katie Vick angle was horrendous. Nobody benefited from that. That was Triple H. Well, I mean, that was Triple H doing Vince's bidding, but honestly, Triple H also isn't a genius at all. Stop the Papa H stuff. You guys are weird. Stop it. Don't get some help. Just stop it. But yeah, he unmasked in June 2003. He becomes a monster. He shaves his head. His wife hated that he lost his long, luxurious hair. And he sets JR on fire, tombstones Linda, shocks Shane's balls. This is skipped over really, really quickly. I mean, the feud with RVD, they skip over the Mania 20 build against Undertaker, which wasn't a great match. It was a pretty good build, considering Undertaker did not come back until the day of the show. And all this, by the way, while he never got his torn ACL and torn meniscus fixed. That's a remarkable thing, is he would do a top rope clothesline, he'd do some good stuff. And you think about that. So that's pretty good. But then various clips of comedy. What you gonna do, brother? Oh, Canaanites and everything in Rock. So we get Team Hell No. Chicks dig the mask. They really skipped over a whole lot of stuff here. The family part, needing to get into politics. They don't mention his nutty views, his stupid views. But then again, maybe it's just because he's smart. He's book smart, but not street smart, or maybe he's half as smart as he really thinks, or really actually is. But nevertheless, Oktoberfest and Taker talking about, Taker thought his idea to go into politics was insane, but he supported him, Vince was supportive, and then we see clips and montages and everything, and that is the life of Kane. Yeah, they skipped over a lot of stuff, but generally, pretty good documentary. Again, they spent a lot of time on the Kane-Undertaker feud, which really did define Kane, to be perfectly honest. So let me know your thoughts in the comments. Like, share, subscribe, Twitter handle in the description. I'm John Retlin. I'll see you soon.